The May 8th, 2023 meeting of the WVU Faculty Senate will come to order. The minutes of the April 10th Faculty Senate meeting were distributed as a link to your agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as written. So we're going to shuffle the order of the Senate meeting today and get through our normal business as quickly as we can so we can devote the rest of the meeting to the important topics around transformation and program review. So we're going to start out today with the report from our Curriculum Committee Chair, Lori Ogden. Lori, are you here?
Yeah, thanks. I just have two for approval items, the new courses report in Annex 1 and the course changes report in Annex 2.
Are there any questions about Annex 1 or Annex or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving Annex 1, the course changes report, and Annex 2, Annex 1, the new courses report, Annex 2, the course changes report, please say aye or raise your hand online. Are there any opposed? All right, the motion carries and those are approved. Next item on the agenda is a report from Lisa DiBartolomeo, Chair of the General Education Foundations Committee. Lisa.
Lisa DiBartolomeo, Eberly College. As I promised last time, we haven't just been twiddling our thumbs. We worked up some new things for you. These are both for information. We have a Jeff definition in Annex 3 and a Jeff rubric that should help new applicants figure out what we're looking for when we approve new Jeff courses. That's in Annex 4. And thank you to Jay Malarche for crafting our definition basically on the first try. So I'm happy to take any questions. No, he toiled. Go Tigers.
Any questions for Lisa on those two for information items? Hearing none. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Next report is from the Chair of the Teaching and Assessment Committee, Diana Davis. Diana.
Diana Davis, School of Medicine. The committee hasn't met formally for a month now, but we have been working behind the scenes to continue to execute the work of the committee. The ESEI comment redaction period, your SEIs are probably rolling into your mailboxes now, will open tomorrow in the afternoon. You will receive an email tomorrow morning with a link to the form that you need to fill out to ask for a redaction of a comment. You will have a longer period of time than typically. You'll have until May 26th to submit a request for redaction, and the decisions on the redactions should be done 2 weeks later on June 9th. The Blue system that houses the student evaluation of instruction was successfully updated over the weekend. The biggest change that faculty are going to notice with that is that the instrument has been renamed the Student Feedback on Instruction instead of the Student Evaluation of Instruction. This is a change in name only. It is the exact same form. We have not snuck in the new pilot instrument or anything. The instructors in Maymester should be able to go in now and set up their student feedback surveys. And the final thing is on our student perception of teaching tool, which is our pilot instrument. It is concluding its second semester. Instructors who are enrolled in the pilot will receive emails on Wednesday with some guidelines on how to use that information and where to go for further support. And there was a comment section added to the new instrument per request on our feedback survey. And so therefore, participants in the pilot program will also be able to submit comments for requests for redaction of comments through the same system that I mentioned. And I will make that clear in the email that is sent out to faculty tomorrow.
Are there any questions for Diana? All right, thank you, Diana. So the Committee on Committees is still working to populate the Senate committees for next year, and they do not have a report for today. Committee memberships will be shared at the June meeting or by email if we don't have that meeting. Faculty representative to state government, Eloise Elliott, by the way, that's 3 L's, 2 O's, and 2 T's, does not have a report for today. Corey, make a note there, please. So next we'll hear from the Board of Governors representative, Stan Heilman.
All right, so we met on April 21st. Of course, we spent a lot of time talking about fiscal issues. We also heard a report from the Student Government Administration, and then we approved changes to rules 1.2, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and 3.5, as there were no real substantive comments made against those rules. The next meeting, regularly scheduled meeting, is June 23rd, but we will probably be meeting much more regularly than that throughout the summer.
Any questions for Stan? Thank you, Stan. The next item is my report. The TLC asked me to remind you of the TLC Celebrate this Wednesday, May 10th, and it'll include panel discussions on ChatGPT and generative AI, among other topics. I want to remind the committee chairs and members to submit your annual committee reports to the Faculty Senate office. We'd like to have those by May 17th so we can include them in the executive committee agenda for the May 22nd executive committee. Summer meeting schedule, recognizing there's an accelerated schedule of program review process that we're going to hear more about today. We've tentatively scheduled monthly summer meetings of the Faculty Senate on June 5th, which is a regularly scheduled meeting that often gets canceled, July 10th, and August 7th. We did have a request from faculty to have an early August meeting, so we put that on the schedule. These meetings will all be held via Zoom, not live here in the Event Center. And while we recognize some senators may be traveling, enjoying summer activities, we want to provide the opportunity for the administration to provide updates and for faculty to hear what's going on during the summer. Several weeks ago, we asked for volunteers who are willing to serve on the Provost Summer Transformation Work Group. And we received several volunteers willing to take on that work over the summer. The Senate leadership team submitted a list to the Provost for consideration, and Provost Reed accepted many of the members that we recommended and added some other members to ensure a well-rounded representation from various disciplines. So the group members will include Frankie Tack, our Senate chair for next year, myself, Anne Marie Hibbert from the Chambers College, Mark Olfert from School of Medicine, Kimberly Gray from WVU Tech, Andrew Nix from the Statler College, Amy Welsh from Davis, Dana Coaster, also from Davis, Damian Clements from CAHS, and the Honors College, Renee Nicholson from the WVU Humanities Centers, Hal Gorby of Eberly, Justin Leglider from Eberly, and a still to be named representative from Potomac State. Any questions about that group? So the provost and her team will reach out to schedule those meetings over the summer. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions for me? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is confirmation of the faculty representative to state government. According to our faculty constitution, the executive committee shall appoint a faculty representative to state government subject to confirmation by the Senate. 2 candidates were nominated for the position, Eloise Elliott and Sam Workman. Both candidates met the criteria for eligibility to be appointed to the position and submitted statements of interest for consideration by the executive committee. During the April 24th meeting, the executive committee appointed Eloise Elliott to a 1-year term as faculty representative to state government by a vote of 9 in favor and 0 opposed. That appointment is subject to confirmation of the Senate. So is there a motion to confirm the executive committee's appointment of Eloise Elliott as the 2023-2024 faculty representative of state government? So moved. Is there a second? Yes, second. All those in favor of confirming this appointment, please raise your hand. Or he's doing a count in the back. How many online? 23 online. Are there any opposed to confirming that appointment? Seeing none, congratulations, Eloise. Next item on the agenda is a resolution to create Faculty Research Committee. Faculty Senate currently has 2 standing committees related to research, the Research and Scholarship Committee, which primarily is active in the spring semester and reviews applications for the Faculty Senate Travel and Development and Research and Scholarship Advancement Grants. The Research Integrity Committee is charged to serve on hearing panels to evaluate cases of research integrity violations, but only is called into action in cases which the respondent requests a hearing before a panel of faculty. Most cases settle before that stage in the process, and the committee has not met formally to review a research integrity case since 2016. So we're presenting a resolution in Annex 5 to abolish the Research and Scholarship Committee and abolish the Research Integrity Committee and create a new Faculty Research Committee whose charge combines the responsibilities of the original 2 committees. Is there a motion regarding that resolution? Moved. Is there a second? All those in favor of combining those 2 committees, please raise your hands. 21 online. Are there any opposed? All right, so that resolution carries, and we've already alerted the Committee on Committees. They'll work to populate that new committee, and they'll reach out to current members and the current chairs, get those details worked out. All right, so we know that the challenging times we face as an institution over the next several years will cause a lot of stress and concern from faculty and staff. So we've asked Dr. Chris Schimmel, WVU Ombudsperson, and Janie Hauser, Director of the Faculty and Staff Assistance Program, to share information on some of the support resources that will be available through their offices.
So the last time I was here, there weren't this many people in the room earlier in the semester. So good to see everyone, I guess. So my name is Chris Schimmel, Associate Professor in School of Counseling and Wellbeing in the New College of Applied Human Sciences, but I do serve as the University Ombudsperson. I'm wrapping up my first year. So I just wanted to, in times of stress, when we're all feeling a little bit more pressure to make change and deal with student comments and deal with all of our issues here at the university, I just did want a few minutes to come before you and remind you of the services of the Ombuds Office. I would say, despite some personal challenges that I had with this academic year, I was still able to serve approximately 20 individuals in finding resolution to difficult situations that they were having in their department. I also was able to meet with approximately 2 groups and units of people that just wanted to make sure their faculty and staff, well, faculty were aware of the services of the Ombuds Office. So I want folks to know that my services go across all campuses, including the health science campus, and also have had the privilege of supporting some folks in extension. So if you're a faculty member here at WVU, you can access the services of the Ombudsperson. We have a website devoted to the office. You can reach out to me either at my personal email or the email that's available on the Ombudsperson website. It's faculty_ombudsperson@mail.wvu.edu. The Ombuds Office provides a confidential source for faculty to meet with me and to discuss options that they have when they're trying to navigate a difficult situation here at work. It can be something around promotion and tenure. It can be something around a student issue. It might involve me helping support you, file a request to have SEI comments removed. I'm really finding that there's no limit to what we can't discuss. I have leaned on the provost's office some to ask questions when I don't know the proper procedure. When members are comfortable, when faculty's comfortable with me running a question up the chain, I'm willing to do that, still preserving confidentiality. So I'm an objective source for people to work with, hopefully. I hope the people that are in the audience or online that have accessed the services this year have felt like I've served them well. And yeah, we'll just continue to hope for that. The one thing that I did want to offer is I believe in the past, the Office of the Ombuds has closed for the summer semester. I will not be doing that this summer. Through support through the provost office from Scott and Frankie, we've decided that I will be available all through the summer. I would like to schedule my appointments, try to keep it Monday through Thursday, and we will be doing mostly Zoom meetings, but that seems to have been the preference throughout the academic year. Most folks have preferred Zoom because you can do it confidentially from your home. You don't have to worry about being in the office or meeting me in an office, which sort of provides some exposure, right, to walk into the Ombuds office. So happy to do that. Please reach out via email and happy to set up an appointment. Again, just because most faculty are going off contract this summer does not mean that you cannot access the services of the Ombuds office.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Janie Hauser, the Director of the Faculty Staff Assistance Program at WVU. I know that people are struggling and they're in pain and they're anxious, and that is what happens when there's rapid organizational change. It really can lead to anxiety, depression, burnout, trauma. And these experiences, as we know, really vary by race, culture, economic opportunity, job type, and parental and caregiving responsibilities that are personal. Even before the rapid organizational change, we know that many of our faculty and staff were experiencing compassion fatigue, and that was through the pandemic. And I know it because you all are coming to see me at FSAP, and I'm hearing about it. I'm hearing your stories. I'm seeing your pain and your anxiety and your fear and your fatigue. And so compassion fatigue is really about, most of the research has been done about people who care for other people. So, and the fatigue comes from caring too much for too long. And so these are some of the signs of compassion fatigue. And I just want you to know that these feelings are normal. And this has been a really difficult couple years, and it continues to be difficult. And so I want to encourage you to, try to accept that it's different right now and manage your expectations, realize that your feelings are normal and they're not wrong, and you are okay. You're not a bad employee. You're not a bad person. Try to acknowledge your feelings and know that you're not alone in this, that there are resources available to you. Dr. Schimmel just shared her resources with the Ombuds office, and also the Faculty Staff Assistance Program is here for you. For those of you who don't know who or what we are, I think all higher ed and federally funded, partially federally funded offices are required to have an employee assistance program. Ours is internal, so that means that the university really supports the employees with wanting to curate and tailor an employee assistance program that will meet and fit the needs of our employee population and our faculty. And so internal employee assistance professionals typically really have a lot of good historical knowledge of the institution and context, as opposed to a lot of external EAPs that are sort of more corporate and generic. So the FSAP is a benefit that is provided by WVU. Each employee gets 3 free sessions of counseling a year. So do your dependents, and so do retirees. So your dependents, your partners, and anyone who is retired. So it's a confidential, brief support and informational counseling and therapy that is provided by licensed clinicians. It can be on the individual, couple, group level, also work groups. We do a lot of on-site grief counseling for work groups who've lost an employee. We can do team building exercises for employees. We're invited often to retreats for employees who are doing team building and cohesion exercises. We don't diagnose. It's completely free and it is confidential. So just to let you know the trends over the past few years, The employees that are more likely to use the FSAP are typically faculty, not staff. And we're utilized at a higher rate by health science center employees. And you can see in 2018, we saw about 432 people, and in 2021, we saw over 1,200, and in 2022, I think these numbers are a little bit off because I copied and pasted them from a different document. We saw it was over 1,200, close to 1,300, and we're on par to see as many people this year. And so last year, most of our visits were done by video, just barely. But already this year, we're seeing a trend towards people wanting to be seen more in person. We can do telephone sessions, we can do email contact. We don't do text counseling or therapy because it's just very difficult to keep that confidential and to make it HIPAA compliant. So we do want to add some more services because we know people are really in distress. And one of the things that we want to add is are what we're going to call listening spaces. And we're going to partner with the Caruth Center. Tian Hawkins has reached out to me about co-leading these groups or doing them together. So we'd like to think about doing and actually start this even next week, a Tuesday virtual drop-in group that will be on Zoom. And we can provide that information to everyone. And, you know, just a place where you can come and talk. And so we know that it's best to kind of talk through these things when you're having stressful times and distressing feelings, that it's better sort of out than in, and being able to talk through them in a safe space that's confidential can really be helpful. We're also going to provide a drop-in group on Thursday that will be in person, and that will be led by one of our providers, Mike Andrew. So you can also call or email us, and often you can get a same-day appointment or a next-day appointment, especially if you have a flexible schedule. So often the reason why people can't get in a more timely manner is not because we don't have schedule availability. It's really more because their schedule prohibits them from being seen more quickly. So we want you to know that we're available. We have a website where you can go and take some online assessments for mental health. One of the things that I don't like to silver lining people, but I'm going to silver lining this and say that our services have been utilized at a much, much higher rate. You can see that we've quadrupled our visits over the last 4 years. And that's partly because of the pandemic, which really, the silver lining is that people utilized their mental health resources at a much higher rate, and stigma of utilization of mental health resources really declined through the pandemic. I really hope that that's one of the things that will sustain. And we really hope that if you're having any difficulty or you want us to come support your work group, please reach out to us, please call. We want to be available to support you in whatever way we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jeannie. So next we'll hear a report and comments from President Gordon Gee.
I arrived right on time and you would put me off, as a matter of fact. So I appreciate that all of us are here today, and thank you very much. First of all, let me just congratulate Eloise. Where are you, Eloise? Congratulations to you. And Scott, I believe this might be the last time we're in person. So I do want to thank you for service well rendered. Scott has been a wonderful chair. Please give him a round of applause, would you please? And Frankie and I just met for an hour, and she gave me my marching orders. So Frankie will be a new member of our board of governors, replacing Ashley Martucci. And Ashley has done a great job. Ashley, are you here? Give her a round of applause, would you please? I really appreciated the faculty leadership. So today, the provost and some of our other senior leaders will be discussing the steps we're taking and will be taking to continue the ongoing transition of the university. But I want to reiterate a few key points before they do so, and I want to be rather short. First of all, the why. why are we doing this? It really boils down to three fundamental reasons. First is financial. The loss of financial support for higher education across this country, both for public institutions, private institutions, is just staggering. It has been that way for some time. Just to not bring up old Siwash, but when I was president of Ohio State in 1990, about 60% of the university's budget came from the state. When I left Ohio State in 2014, it was down to 8%. Here, when I was president of this university in 1980, it was about 75 to 80%. Now it's about 15%. So these are not trends that any of us can sustain, but they are the reality that we're dealing with. And of course, we have inflation. Inflation is a significant problem that we're all facing. And this is one of the issues that we had not, we had gone through a non-inflationary period for a long period of time, but inflation is with us and continues to be part of the culture we're dealing with. The second issue is the demographic cliff. And we know that that is a very serious issue. We have anticipated that about 20% fewer students over the next period of time. For some reason or other, 18-year-olds or people about 18 years ago stopped having children. I'm not certain if I know why, but that has certainly been a dramatic impact upon higher education. We still have the same number of institutions, although a number of them are closing, but we still have a large cohort out there of institutions chasing after fewer numbers. The second thing is the great dropout. 4 million students have dropped out of college, and we don't know why. But that is a dramatic impact on who we can and who we're serving. 4 million, and one of the problems with the 4 million, we don't know where they are, whether they're in their parents' basement or wherever they are. I have no idea, but it's a staggering number. And those have not decreased. In fact, if anything, they have increased. But perhaps the biggest issue, and I wanted to underscore this, the biggest issue that we face is a very simple one. Higher education has lost the support and trust of the American public. It is that simple. 95% of the American public in 1980 felt that higher education was good. Today, it's now below 50% and going south fast. And so people say no longer is higher education important, and if it is, I'm not certain I want to send my kid there. And they also are very concerned about the quality of the educational experience, a variety of other things. And we are our own worst enemy in that regard. Let me just say this. I'm going to be very blunt. We have been isolated. We have been arrogant. We have told the American public what they should think rather than what they want to think. They are now telling us what they think, and they've dropped away from us. We have to manage that. We have to turn that around almost immediately. Otherwise, we have a very bleak future indeed. And so what are we planning on doing? We're going to focus on three things. And from my speech, my State of the University speech in March, I gave these points, and I'm going to reiterate them again. First of all, we have to put students first. We simply can no longer be an institution that puts students as a convenience, but rather they have to be put first. We have to do everything that we possibly can to make certain that our students and their families feel that we care deeply about them and that we do. Secondly of all, we have to reassert our land-grant mission. We've drifted away from it. Many of the land-grant universities, there are only 50 plus of these institutions, and that is a singular quality of great responsibility for us. Because in this state particularly, the land-grant mission really means that we care about our communities, we care about our families, we care about health. We just opened up another hospital, Thomas Healthcare Health System today in Charleston. We now provide healthcare for 90% of the people in this state. It's those kinds of things that are land-grant centric that will garner the support of the people of the state and the American public in general. And the final thing, obviously, that we have to do is we have to differentiate ourselves. The things we do well, we need to continue to do. The things we should be doing well, we have to make certain we do that. But also, we do some things that are unique. We're in a small state, a big institution in a small state. We sit on the Eastern time zone. We are an energy state, but all the above energy, coal, oil, gas, wind power, nuclear, we have so many opportunities in terms of things that we can do, in terms of engineering, in terms of public health, in terms of what we're doing in forensics and neuroscience. I could go on and on and on. We have so many programs. And of course, we're in Appalachia, so we give great deference to the arts and to storytelling and to those things which I think are very endemic of our culture. We need to continue to support that culture. So the next thing I want to remind you of, this is not a process that started yesterday. We started this in 2014. Remember when we had that conversation about the fact that we were going to make this place leaner and that we were going to try to be much more agile and capable, and we have done a number of things in that regard. That was the beginning of this conversation. And then obviously we moved to our state legislature. We said, if you can't give us money, give us freedom. And they did. It was a brilliant move on our part, because we were an overly bureaucratized institution. And they have given us a lot of freedom, which has given us way to be able to do things we haven't been able to do otherwise. And then 2 years ago, when we really perceived that this whole issue was coming toward us, I asked the provost to engage in an academic transformation initiative. That, of course, was on top of the fact that we were dealing with a pandemic. You know, I joke about the fact that I'm the only university president whose name was mentioned in the Old Testament, but I can tell you that I've been at this a long time. I've never experienced a pandemic, and I hope I never do again. But the pandemic has been a singularly difficult issue for all of us. The mental health issues, we talked about that today, and I love the two presentations. We talk about the fact that our students, 10% of our students felt like that they had some mental health problems 10 years ago, and it's now 75%. What does that tell us? That tells us we've got a whole different context in which we're operating. And obviously, we know that all of these issues together are very, very difficult for us to look at. So we had to go through this transformation. But it just is accelerated. It's accelerated because it has to, not simply because of dollars and cents, but if we want to be competitive as an institution, if we want to make certain that we're first in line for people thinking about an institution in which to send their children, rather than as an afterthought, we have to do these. But we have to do them in a positive way, in a constructive way. I'm very, very concerned about how we do this, that we do it well and we do it right, that we end up being a stronger institution as we're doing this than we are now. And I think that those are all aspirations that we need to have. And so, again, some of the things will need to change. It is, from my point of view, too early to say what services, programs, or jobs. These decisions will be determined through data-driven assessment that the provost and Rob Alsop will discuss shortly. We have three ways that we're looking at this. First is to be very transparent. Got a call from the Chronicle of Education, Higher Education, said, why in heck's sake are you saying that you've got these problems? You know, that's not a way to do it. And I said, well, you know, I think the transparency is important. And so now that we did it, well, Penn State's done it, Minnesota's done it, everyone, all of a sudden everyone's getting on the bandwagon and saying we've got problems. I think it does us well to be transparent, not only with our publics, with our parents, with our students, but most importantly with all of you. And we'll be extremely transparent, painfully transparent, but we'll do that. Secondly of all, we're going to be very data driven. In the end, we are places we are a place that does research, and we give great deference to our research. And we've hired groups from outside to take a look at that, to confirm the quality of the research we're doing. And we won't simply be driven by data. If X or Y, will be driven by the confluence of what makes the most sense for us, who we are as an institution, what is our history, what is our tradition, what are we going to do? But data is very important. And the final thing, of course, is speed. And all of you say, why are we doing this so fast? Well, if it's very simple. I want to wring the damn fear out of the place. The sooner you know where we are and what we're going to do and what programs are going to grow and what programs may no longer be with us or that will be put in a different category, then we can move on about our business. But if we drag this thing out, our budget deficit is going to grow and it's going to be worse. People are going to leave because of the fact that they're fearful. Everything that in my body tells me that speed is our friend. And I want you to be there with me. And that's the final point I'm going to make. You know, we can say that there's academic freedom, and there is. We can say that there is shared governance, and there is. But today, I'm going to tell you something. There is shared responsibility. This is not my problem. This is everyone's problem. And I don't want to have people come up to me and say, why are you doing that? I want everyone to come up and say, these are our ideas. We've got a lot of geniuses in this room. So let's take advantage of all the firepower we have and let's come up with the great ideas. We will be better for it. But I don't want to have people come and say, well, it's your problem. It is our problem. We're going to engage in shared responsibility and we're going to engage in academic responsibility. And I think that if we do that, you know, we're going to be a hell of a lot better institution. And at the end of the day, we're going to have great success. So saying that, Madam Provost, it's your turn, okay?
And we will take questions at the end of our presentation, okay? So we'll give everybody an opportunity to ask your question. So I do want to thank you, President Gee, for providing the context and setting the charge. And good afternoon, everyone, by the way. In my report today, I will talk about the next steps of academic transformation. And then I will invite Rob Alsop to the podium to share the approach that his team is taking to create greater efficiencies across the university and to remind us of the changes and improvements that have already been implemented in recent years. Rob and I are partners in this effort, and we are working together to address our current budget challenge and to envision a brighter and more sustainable future for WVU over the next several years. In academic affairs, we are approaching this challenge through 4 areas of work. First, we will be doing a more extensive review of our academic program portfolio with the goal of streamlining our offerings to ensure we are allocating our limited resources to support current and future areas of growth and to provide the most value to our students. To aid us in this work, we will be bringing more data to the process, data that was not previously available. This includes analyzing the cost to deliver each academic program and reviewing enrollment and revenue trends over time. We will look at other factors, such as how each program contributes to the university's R1 position and to the extent that it is available, employment data for these disciplines. We are working with the RPK Group. They are a higher education consultant with great expertise in this area to ensure that we are being thorough and thoughtful and that our metrics and analysis are in line with industry standards and best practices. It is important to say upfront that our college and university leadership and ultimately our Board of Governors will be making tough choices. Through this process, even programs that we know to be of high academic caliber might be identified for reduction or discontinuation due to changes in student demand, market factors, and other external forces that are beyond our control. We simply can't afford to do everything that we're currently doing, and we need to focus on areas that have the greatest impact. Secondly, we will be going deeper into academic restructuring. This will likely result in additional college and/or departmental mergers designed to reduce administrative costs, eliminate program redundancies, and create new opportunities for collaboration and differentiation. We will likely be announcing these new academic structures over the next several months, but it will take up to a year working with leaders, faculty, and staff in those units to fully implement the changes. In our third area of work, we will be identifying additional instructional efficiency, such as enforcing equitable and reasonable faculty workloads, reducing our reliance on part-time instructors, reducing teaching overloads and course equivalencies, and reviewing and standardizing administrative stipends. The more work we can do in this area, the fewer faculty and staff reductions we will need to make. We know that our colleges are already engaged in this work to meet their fiscal year 2024 budgets. And finally, we will be working with RPK to help us identify greater efficiencies across the academic support units that report to academic affairs. There are a number of these units, such as the Registrar, the Office of Global Affairs, WVU Libraries, the Teaching and Learning Commons, and many more. We believe there is still room to streamline our operations while still providing needed services to our students, faculty, and staff. A couple of other points I want to make. You will soon be hearing about the timeline for the program portfolio review process and for potential personnel reductions. The pace of this change, as Gordon alluded to, will be faster than our campus is used to. But the Board of Governors has given us a tight timeline in part to ensure that we can achieve some cost savings in fiscal year 2025. If we don't act aggressively now, then next year will be even tougher because we won't have the foundation funds to draw from that we utilize for fiscal year 2020. But we also know, and Gordon alluded to this because we are also hearing this, that there is a need for certainty among faculty and staff who may be affected by these changes. And since the academic recruiting cycle begins in the fall, we want to make sure that faculty and academic support staff who may be losing their positions will have time to look for other jobs. As a result, much of the work will need to occur over the summer, which I know is not ideal for faculty with 9-month contracts, but these are special circumstances. Today, we will be presenting the granular details of our timeline, which will be updated throughout the summer. Faculty will have the opportunity to provide input, but you, will need to stay informed, read communications that are sent to you, and respond to requests for information that may be coming from your college or department. As Scott mentioned in his report, a number of faculty have already volunteered to participate in a small work group that will be meeting regularly this summer with members of my team. We will be sharing with them our metrics, our analyses, and key decision points to make sure we're not missing anything and to help us better understand the impacts of these changes on faculty and their academic units. And finally, I want to acknowledge that this is going to be very difficult. As President Gee said, people that we care about are going to be affected. And this is going to cause tremendous stress and strain on our community. Please know that we will do everything we can to support our university citizens who may be struggling, including increasing mental health and counseling services, as you just heard, through the severance options that we are able to provide, by celebrating the accomplishments of our faculty and staff at every opportunity, and potentially by offering outplacement services to help faculty and staff find jobs, both inside and out of academia. There are organizations that provide this service. We are looking into it. We are interviewing them to find out what services they provide, the costs they charge, and really to find out if what they are able to do will help our faculty and staff during this time. So I thank all of you. And again, I just want to say how much we appreciate you and how much we recognize that this is a very, very difficult. And so now I'm going to ask my colleague, Rob Alsop, to come up to talk about some of the things that we'll be doing on the non-academic side of the university.
Well, good afternoon. You've heard our charge from our president, and along with Mary Ann, our leadership team has been working hard to balance a number of things moving forward: our financial realities, the needs of our campus, the needs of our students and faculty as we move forward. And as Mary Ann indicated, one of the things you'll hear today, and hopefully from Stephanie's timeline, that she'll present here in a few minutes, an effort to be transparent and to seek input throughout the process. So you'll hear about public comment periods. You'll hear about campus conversations, a number of board meetings, and a process as we move through the fall and trying to be transparent. I'll reiterate what Mary Ann said. We know that this is going to be hard. We are committed as a leadership team to thoughtfully listening and answering questions as we seek a path that holds true to our values. We want to be diligent and thoughtful, but as the president indicated, we're going to work together to add as much clarity as soon as we can, as often as we can. We know this is an uncertain time. As a leadership team, Mary Ann and I, the president, our leadership team, we are committed to the future of WVU. And what you just heard from the president and from Mary Ann was somber. That's usually my job. So let me say this. We have a bright future ahead of us. We're going to get through these next few months. We're going to make some hard decisions. We are a powerful brand. We have an incredible amount of intellectual horsepower. We are a sought after place, and we will continue to be. Part of what we're doing now is to make sure that that's the case. We've heard from a lot of different folks who aren't perhaps maybe moving as quick or as in a strident fashion to address our challenges as others. From my perspective, I think that means we'll turn the corner quicker and be back on the offense, which is where we all need to be. Again, I know this has been hard. It's been hard for Mary Ann and I. There have been days where we've had to pick each other up and move on, and it's, I know that everybody on campus is going through those, but we'll make it through that together. It's often dark before the dawn, but we're going to get there. And the administrative side of the house needs to do and change itself as well. Now, we've talked about some of those changes that have happened previously. But we are working on, it has been announced, and the team's working on an ITS merger between the Health Science Center and the General University. I saw a new org chart today. I do think that'll bring about some efficiencies that we can use at the institution. We do have a new budget model that I think will be a step forward in terms of how we invest and the level of transparency at the institution, and will allow for better decision-making across campus as we move forward. We're taking a hard look at the effective use of space and buildings. We are negotiating either through an RFP process or with our current holder for our steam plant to have some savings from that perspective. We're looking at, and there'll be some things that'll come out about the management of temperatures in buildings off hours, and additional reductions on the administrative side, including non-renewals. And those are happening now. And over the next several weeks as we plan for the changes that we need to make for fiscal year 24 and into fiscal year 25. And so while this is going to be hard, we are going to do the things we need to do. Most of us are going to be here. We have to do some things. We have to make some changes. But we're going to be a strong institution as we come out of this. And again, we're committed today. And as we told Scott, we're happy to answer questions for as long as it takes as we go through from all of this to work through this as a community. And we'll get through it together. So with that, Scott, pitch it over to Stephanie. Stephanie, if you come up.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to spend a few minutes here in the beginning walking through the WVU transformation timeline, which highlights the key events from program review, personnel reduction, some of the administrative items that we're talking about that will occur from May through November. And as you'll see through this timeline, and as Rob mentioned too, there will be multiple opportunities for faculty involvement and input in the process, particularly the program review process. And there will also be several Board of Governors meetings and campus conversations that you can participate in. And I will note that this timeline and even a more detail will be available online. And we're also putting together some more detailed information that'll come out in mid-May. Okay, so first at the Faculty Senate meeting, that's what we're here today. So you heard from President Gee, our provost, and Rob. We're going to walk through the timeline. I'm also going to walk through some proposed amendments to BOG Rule 4.7, which is our reduction in force timeline. And then also some sort of guidelines and principles and parameters on the potential faculty severance package schedule. Later this week, there will be, we're working through any of the voluntary requests for work time reduction that were put in by our faculty and staff. And on May 11th, we'll be announcing the indoor space temperature policy that will become effective as Rob referenced, that's where we're going to have some temperature controls in some of our buildings to have some operational efficiencies there. On May 17th, we will have a Board of Governors meeting. And during that meeting, we'll ask our board to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking for Rule 4.7, which is what I'm going to go over here today, and also Rule 3.9, which is the classified staff reduction in force rule. We will also ask our board to put out the faculty and classified staff severance packages or the schedule for those for public comment. And then we'll ask our board to vote on the transformational timeline. There will be public comments available for all of the rules, for the 2 rules, and the severance package schedules. That will begin on May 22nd. For those of you that have participated in our rulemaking process before, you can go online and submit a form and submit your comment that way. We'll have a campus conversation on May 24th, and then no later than May 28th, if you put in a request for a reduced time or a work time reduction, you'll know, you'll have a conversation with your supervisor on whether that was feasible or not. So before I get into the June time slide, I did want to note that essentially from now and even before now, through the end of June, the Provost Office is working to gather the data on the academic programs, and they will be using that data to begin the assessment on whether a program might be one of concern, and we'll go through the detailed program review process. So that's all going on now behind the scenes as you see it. There'll be another Faculty Senate meeting on the 5th. On June 21st is when the comment period for both the rules and the severance package schedule ends. We will have another board meeting. It's our regularly scheduled board meeting on June 22nd. They will vote on the budget for FY24. They will get an update on our projections for FY25, and then there will be updates from the Provost Office on some of the academic and non-academic transformation. We'll have another campus conversation on June 27th. So now really kind of as we move into July is where we do start the more in-depth program review process. So on July 1, the Provost Office will be finalizing a report identifying programs of concern based upon the data and analysis that they've been doing. There is a Faculty Senate meeting scheduled for the 10th, and the week of July 10th, deans and chairs, as well as the university community at large, will be notified which programs are of concern and will be subject to the review process. On the flip side of that, if your program is not on that list, you will not go through a review process, and you do not need to be concerned about the remainder of this timeline at this point in time. Through July 11th through the 31st, our deans and chairs will be seeking input from our faculty and staff on the program review self-study form before it is submitted to the Provost Office. The Provost Office, we're working through a more structured process on that, but at minimum, you'll have an opportunity to submit written comments to your deans and chairs about the draft program review form before it is finalized and submitted to the Provost Office. In late July, we're still working to nail down the specific time. We will have a Board of Governors meeting. That's when they will vote to approve or not the amendments to the rules and the severance package schedules. We also will be discussing at that meeting too the programs of concern that have been identified. In August, so August 1st is when the deans and chairs have to submit their finalized program review self-study form back to the Provost Office. We'll have a campus conversation on the 2nd, Faculty Senate again on the 7th. On July 11th and then on the 14th is when our faculty and the community at large will be notified based upon the review forms and the work of the Provost Office is doing, what the Provost Office's preliminary reduction or preliminary recommendations for program reduction or discontinuation are. So that's when they will release out, we recommend that this program be reduced or discontinued or some hybrid thereof. If you would like to file appeal for your program on those preliminary recommendations, you have until August 18th to do that. You don't have to file any documentation about your appeal. All you have to do is submit a form that says, I intend to appeal this. It'll be an online form that you can submit. There'll be another BOG meeting in mid-August there, either the 21st or the 22nd. And then from August 21st through September 5th, we will be having the Program Review Appeal Committee hearings. So just to talk a couple minutes about that, the committee under the rule, the BOG 2.2 rule, that committee consists of the vice provost, the program review officer, I should say the relevant associate provost, which depends on whether it's an undergrad or graduate program, the dean or the representative from the dean's office where the program is housed, 2 other dean's office representatives from different colleges, and the faculty senate chair or designee. Typically, we give the folks who would like to appeal 30 minutes to present, and then we have about 15 minutes for questions. Then we ask them to leave, and there's deliberation amongst the folks on the committee. We will be asking people to submit any documentation that they would like the program review committee to review in advance, approximately 3 days in advance of their scheduled hearing. Additionally, around the same time, we will also be opening an opportunity for folks to submit written comments to our Board of Governors. So from August 22nd through September 8th, there'll be an online form where you can submit a comment about one of the Provost Office's preliminary recommendations. It will be similar to how you submit the rules comments. Additionally, you'll have the opportunity to sign up to speak at the Board of Governors meeting on September 14th, which is the day before they would take any votes on these actions. Just as a note, we are going to limit the speakers to 2 per program. So if 20 people email me or sign up to speak on a particular program, I'll send you an email and ask that you select 2 representatives amongst yourselves and let me know who those are. And then the folks will have roughly between 3 to 5 minutes per person to speak. Now, anybody can submit a written comment. There's no limits on that. And we'll take those up through September 8th. Those will be compiled and we will send those directly to our Board of Governors for their review and consideration. We'll have another campus conversation on the 24th. The appeal process should be completed by September 6th. Faculty Senate, as you know, all know y'all have another meeting on September 11th. We'll go through what will now be the final recommendations for program reduction or discontinuation. That'll go before the Board of Governors. And we'll talk about the speaking sort of schedule and any rules for the public comment period. September 14th will be that Board of Governors meeting. There'll be a financial update, an update on the general progress with academic and non-academic transformation. And then the vast majority of it will be devoted to the public comment portion. The next day on the September 15th, the board will vote on the final recommendations for program reduction or discontinuation. So I'm going to stop there. That's the program the program review process from now through September. After that point is when we would move into the reduction in force process here at the institution for any relevant programs. So if your program is selected for reduction or discontinuation or determined for that and approved by the board for that, we will be scheduling a meeting the week of September 18th with your particular program. There'll be a representative from the provost office there, the dean's office, talent and culture. The purpose of that meeting is to sort of talk through the practical aspects of the reduction or discontinuation in terms of personnel reductions. They'll talk through any new workload requirements for our faculty within that program. Some programs may change how they are delivering or what the emphasis is in that particular program, so the workload requirements may change. We'll talk about how severance packages will work and next steps and timeline. We will be asking all faculty in an affected program to affirmatively indicate whether they wish to remain. And if they wish to remain, that they will abide by any of the new workload requirements that are applicable to them in what the new program may look like, or the program will look like after the reduction. In October, early October, the RIF plans will be, for the affected programs, will be reviewed and finalized. Those are put together in collaboration with the dean's office, the chair, talent and culture, the provost office, and then they have to be reviewed and approved or rejected or amended by the university RIF committee before they are implemented. But the week of September 16th is when an individual will know if they are subject to a RIF, or in some instances, particularly on the staff side, or our teaching track or service track faculty, non-renewal of their contract. And then we have another Board of Governors meeting in November. So that is the timeline. As I said, additionally, there will be a website with more detailed information on program review and the reduction in force process. It will launch in mid-May. We're also going to put some templates on that you can link to if you want to look at what some of the notification documentation will look like throughout the process. So really quickly on 4.7, I just want to spend a couple of minutes of going through some of the key provisions in this rule before we talk about the proposed amendments. So faculty RIF can occur in response to, irrelevant here, a program reduction or discontinuation. And it may result in a tenure track, teaching track, or service track faculty members' appointment being terminated. From a practical aspect, the provost office, dean's office, department chair, with assistant from talents and culture, and the office of general counsel will work collaboratively to develop the RIF plan. And that plan will detail which faculty members will be asked to remain and which will be subject to a reduction in force or contract non-renewal. How we evaluate the faculty members, this is detailed in the rule. It's based on 3 factors: performance, I'll note documented performance, knowledge and qualifications, and seniority. Not one factor is more important than the other. It is a holistic assessment. The RIF review committee will review and consider the RIF plan, and then the university RIF review committee consists of representatives from the provost office, strategic initiatives, talent and culture, and with advice from my office. The rule indicates that the university may offer severance packages to a faculty member that is subject to a RIF. If we offer a severance package, the employee will have 45 days to review the severance package and decide whether they want to sign it or not. And even after they sign it, they have 7 days of which they could revoke their signature on that. So there is a fair amount of time to make that determination and review the documentation. Any severance agreements do contain a statement that the faculty member releases all claims against the institution, and that would include any grievance right claims or litigation claims. And if a faculty member chooses not to execute a severance agreement, that's fine, but the university can still or will still move forward with the RIF or the termination of their employment. So we are proposing some amendments to Rule 4.7. As you all know, this is the first time, at least anybody can think of, that certainly the first time we're using this rule, but the first time that we have done a reduction in force for faculty. So we're proposing these amendments to clarify the current principles in the rule and to ensure that the language being used is precise. We don't want to have any confusion as we get into this process, and we want to provide our faculty with certainty on how this process will work. The red line version of this rule with the proposed amendments will be posted online and will be part of that 30-day comment period that I discussed earlier. So you'll have an opportunity to sit down and quietly read the amendments and provide any feedback that you may have through the public comment process. But today I did want to highlight some of the proposed amendments. So in section 2.2, we're clarifying that the faculty should be involved in the academic review process, which is consistent with BOG Rule 2.2. And again, the academic review process could lead to the RIF as opposed to the formulation of the RIF plan itself to ensure that faculty input is had early in the process. In 3.1, we're eliminating an affirmative obligation to make a first right of refusal offer to a RIF faculty member if another faculty position becomes vacant, that the RIF faculty member is qualified. However, we're putting into the rule that the RIF faculty members are encouraged to apply for any new or open positions at the university through the normal university hiring process. And we're eliminating any potential implied obligation that the university may have to retrain faculty members to be qualified for other faculty positions. In section 3.2, this talks about the RIF plan. So we're clarifying that this is a collaborative effort between the dean's office and the provost office. We're clarifying that the RIF determination is based on a holistic assessment based on those 3 factors that we talked about previously. Those factors remain unchanged. And we also are clarifying how we're calculating seniority. This is based on our standard years of service calculation, which is outlined in some other BOG rules. In 3.3, we are clarifying that all notifications that anybody will receive about this process will come through their WVU email account instead of regular mail. Now, in for section 5.2, I think initially I just want to note, as I said earlier, that severance packages are in fact optional under the rule as it currently stands. So what we're eliminating here is there was some language that says generally the value of the severance package should be equivalent to 1 year of the faculty member's annual base salary. And we're replacing it with that the amount of severance that a faculty member may be offered will be determined based upon a schedule approved by the board. The current language that's in there is permissive and doesn't require the payment of a year's severance. And it doesn't require any feedback from the faculty in setting that severance schedule. So under the new language, the faculty would have the opportunity through the public comment period to review and provide feedback on any severance package schedule before it is approved by the board. So it also adds another level of transparency in this process. I'm going to go through some of the parameters on our faculty severance package that we will be proposing to the board. We are actually still working out some of the details on that in light of some feedback that we received from Faculty Senate leadership, which was very helpful. But I do have some high level things. The goal, though, is through the notice period and through severance payments that individuals will receive between 8 and 10 months of pay. The last thing is we're clarifying in 6.9 that program reduction does in fact include the reduction of faculty lines. So just a quick overview on the faculty severance schedule. So severance packages are only available to tenure, tenure track, and TAPS and SAPs. As I said, through the notice period, an individual would receive under our current parameters between 8 and 10 months. Or, as you all know, most of your positions are 9-month positions. Assuming a notice date of October 16th, which is what we outlined in the timeline, and a contract end date of May 9th, the faculty would have 30 weeks of notice before their position would end. Like I said, we are finalizing these details. But severance payments on top of the notice would likely range between 2 to 12 weeks of the faculty member's base salary payable in biweekly installments, and those would start after May 9th, 2024. And the specific amount would be calculated between those ranges based on the faculty position type, years of service, and contract end dates. So if you add that in short, combining the notice period with the severance payments, the faculty would have between 32 weeks and 42 weeks, depending on faculty position, years of service, and contract end date. I will note that if someone leaves their employment at the university before May 9th, they do waive the right to any severance. Research track, library track, and lecturer positions. These are on annual year-to-year contracts. We'll be ending those contracts. They are not entitled to severance under our current BOG rules, but we do aim to try to give everybody 60 days notice at minimum before their contract ends. Through our current schedule, these folks, if they are part of the program review and reduction position eliminations, they'll receive those notice the same time as the other faculty in the September-October timeline. Now, there will be some faculty whose program is discontinued, but as you all know, we'll need to do a teach out for a particular program. And we would like to incentivize those individuals who are asked to stay through the teach out period, which is, could be, 1 to 2 additional years after the end of 2024. If a person is asked to remain through the teach out and they stay the whole time, we are looking to give them a retention bonus equivalent of up to, we're working through the specific details, of 12 weeks of their base salary. And again, if they leave early, they leave after 1 year and don't stay for the full 2 years of the teach out, they would waive the right to that retention bonus. So just again, a summary on these particular items, during the BOG meeting is when we'll present this to the board and ask them to put both the rule amendments and the faculty severance schedule out for public comment. The public comment period will start on May 22nd and it'll end on June 21st. It's electronic. You can submit a written comment. And as some of you all know, I read through these very, very carefully, and we take all our comments into consideration and whether we want to make any amendments or not. I have the approximate sign up here because we haven't set the date definitively for the July Board of Governors meeting. But essentially, the public comments have to be publicly posted on the website 10 days before the board would vote on those rules and the severance package structure. And also the final versions of those documents would be posted at that time. That's 10 days before the July Board of Governors meeting.
Okay, so the first question online, could you clarify if seniority is a positive or negative factor?
So I would say positive factor. So those are the three factors that we take into consideration. So if somebody's performance and their knowledge and skills are equal, then we would look at seniority to determine who would remain seniority as a positive versus who would be subject to a reduction in force.
Hi, Mark Fullen, Extension Service. I'm curious with the timeline, how it relates to the support units that are also sort of colleges, extension libraries. Are they part of that process, and will that be public?
Hi, Mark. Yes, they will. So those are those academic support units that we talked about. I think I said it was the fourth area of work that we're looking at. Yes. So extension is an academic support unit, as are the libraries and some of those other groups I talked about. Yes. So we will be updating the timeline with more information about that work as well. But we will also be looking at that work this summer and working with the consultants specifically to help us look at that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
There's one other online so far. Does this October deadline for notifying faculty of RIFs apply to all programs or just those proposed for reduction?
So in order to do a reduction of force, you have to have a program reduction or discontinuation. So the answer to that question is yes, it applies for the ones that'll be the program reduction or discontinuation. Managing our other budgetary needs, whether it's staff, non-classified or classified, we typically do non-renewals of those in early spring. So those may have a little bit of a longer tail, but for anybody that's going through the review process, which will include the reduction of faculty positions, that will be known in that October timeline.
Joe Hodge, Eberly College. So the question I have is how to put this. Could there be flexibility if, like, in this holistic assessment, say there's somebody who could volunteer for a severance package? In other words, if there was some colleague who was targeted for this or identified for this and somebody who wasn't, could somebody who may be in a better position to, relocate or whatever it might be, actually, you know what I'm saying? Like say, hey, would you consider me instead of my colleague for that severance package?
Now, I appreciate that. That's very generous. So we will be doing that self-affirmation in the beginning where you can, if you say you don't want to continue in the unit and you don't want to do whatever the new workloads are, or you don't want to continue in the unit for any reason, you'll be automatically part of the set of employees that will be subject to the reduction in force. So there'll be kind of that early opportunity to select basically in or out of the pool. But
as a corollary on the classified staff side, just as it relates to the reduction in force, after a decision is made that we're going to take a 10-person unit down to 7, then there's a discussion of are there folks who say, well, you know what, at the end of this year, I was thinking about retiring anyway. I'll step away and take the severance and move on. Or, you know what, I've been thinking about a life change at this moment. I'm actually going to apply for a different job. I feel pretty good. I'll be one of those. And so I believe, there are more limitations on the faculty side, given knowledge, skill set, all those things. But as we've worked through this on the classified staff, there is that opportunity to sort of work forward on the unit for some discretion in trying to work through that. The goal is to minimize sort of the involuntary reduction in force if we can work through it with the unit. Or by the same token, a teacher may say, or a faculty may say, I've only got a couple of years, there's a teach out. We'll work through it on that as a unit once the decision is made as to the discontinuance or the reduction.
So there will be some flexibility there, like at the unit level when it comes to that point in making those kinds of decisions.
So I think let me say this, and that will be the goal. I can't say that in every instance there may be certain knowledge or skill set where that may not be applicable, but the general rule is there will be through that affirmation process, the ability to sit down and work through who's going to be here and not moving forward. So can't guarantee it in every instance, but that's the goal, is to work with the unit on how best to treat everybody going forward.
Rob, I'll get one question online that you might want to take. How much is the university spending on consultants?
So on the consultants, so if you're talking about generally speaking on consultants, we can try to get that information to you. The RPK contract is an hourly rate contract. And so, you know, we believe that they will add value in terms of what we're going to do moving forward. And I realize and appreciate the question. It's one of those things where if we didn't have a consultant, we'd say, well, you need some objective eye, but if we bring out a third party to sort of look at it and say, why are you spending for them? We will keep you informed as we work through on the amount of expenditures for that. I don't have off the top of my head sort of the base budgets, but it's an hourly rate contract, and we don't want to spend, and we want to get value for what we spend, but not overspend with them.
Emily Murphy, College of Applied Human Sciences. So we've been hearing a lot about the need to engage and retain and recruit our students, which I think we've heard that message loud and clear, and we've been doing everything other than standing on our heads in class to try to do that. I just wonder, like, what are we doing to engage students in this process of looking at the programs and what their needs are, as far as, you know, keeping things, again, like more satisfying for the students to, you know, to really work on engagement and retention?
Well, Emily, as you know, we're working very hard on our retention efforts and student success, and we appreciate everything that faculty do to help us with that. In terms of engaging students in this process, you know, we are working on a very tight timeline, as we have indicated, and there will be opportunity, I'm sure, through this process in which we're soliciting feedback from the unit, but we're not directly going to ask students about what they think about these changes. We are using data to help us to show what students are interested in, but there may be students even in programs that we decide to eliminate that will not be happy, and we know that. But we feel it's something we have to do.
And I ask that because a lot of what we're hearing is trying to provide more online classes, but we see that our students are less engaged in those online classes. So again, just balancing that and making sure that that student perspective and their needs and their wants are going to be listened, or somehow not maybe listened to, but at least, you know, going to put in the mixture of the equation.
I think transitioning to online is not part of this process, right? And we still offer the large majority of our programs and courses in person.
I will take a question from online from Assad Daveri. Assad?
Thanks. My question is, all these stated in that presentation apply to university system or is only for the main campus?
Everybody, system-wide.
Okay, another question is this financial situation, which basically is stated, is it also due to high interest rate bond and the new buildings, or is only enrollment and PIA? Thank you.
Sure. So most of the debt that we issued was issued, you know, I guess the last major debt issuance that we issued, and there's a couple of caveats, really was for Reynolds, Hodges, and some things for athletics, which was during the early stages of COVID. And even before that time, it was a really low interest rate period. So most of our debt has pretty low fixed interest rates. I will say that during COVID and this past year, we're actually closing on a debt issuance last week, or this week, for WVU modernization and for some projects like the stormwater and others that's going on at Jackson's Mill. I think the interest rate from that is right around 5%. So not, you know, particularly in a historical context, really high interest rates. I will say that over the last decade, we did issue quite a bit of debt. The next 5 to 7 years, there is a bunch of principal and interest that is getting paid off on that, and then the debt service goes down. So we're at the high mark of it. So it's not, we did not have like a bunch of variable interest rate debt that the interest rate increased and caused a huge spike in the amount of debt we pay. It's more on the payment of principal and interest over all of our debt issuances over the past 15 years that we're just at the bit of an arc, and then we come down the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you. Victor Musino from Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. My question relates to decisions being made that have this magnitude of significance. Typically, a decision of this type comes together with some kind of effect. In other words, like cost and benefit. In terms of the reduction in force, there's going to be a significant impact across the university. And while the benefit is evident and is driven by difficult financial situation and everything else, I would like to ask you, what is the impact that you think is going to have in many units? We are talking about staying competitive. We are working very hard in retention, in enrollment, in quality, in rankings, in R1 status. And yet, this kind of decision is going to have an impact beyond finances. Will you please share what is your vision of what the impact is going to be in the units in terms of productivity, competitiveness, enrollment, retention, all those?
We know that, well, let me say this, when President Gee had a State of the University and then I had the campus conversation the next week where we talked about some of our challenges, that it would cause some consternation and negative impacts as an institution. And we know, and we've talked about the fact that as we go through this over the next several months, that there'll be some negative impacts to our institution moving forward. I mean, there's just no question that when, there's a reason why the private sector will go through a management decision at the end of the quarter, announce it at the beginning of the first quarter, offices are cleared out and everybody moves on and they've made the adjustments and they move because it's quick and there's a quick pivot to the vision for the future. As a public institution where we have notice and comment and we work through and we seek data and we give our employees the opportunity to comment, that is a longer process. And it is what it is from that perspective, and I'm not complaining about it. But that much of a process leaves a period of lack of clarity and consternation that I hate. I do. I'd like to move quick, but I know we can't move as quick because of that very fact. What I can tell you is, from my perspective, I wish we had those additional 5,000 students we've dropped, but we haven't. And, I have talked with the president about this. I wish during the depths of COVID that perhaps I would have said, you know what, maybe enrollment's not going to bounce back and we need to start moving closer. I think at the end of the day, had we done that, the campus community would have said, let's see how we get out of COVID a little bit before we start to move forward. And so I wish I had seen around corners to where I could have moved and asked the institution to move quicker, where we weren't on an accelerated timeline. We have a number of scenarios that are not particularly ideal. With that said, and those variables and all of the terrific things that come with WVU, I believe our best strategy is to have a number of transparent conversations with our campus, to make our decisions in early fall, and to plant our flag as we get towards October and November, as this is how we're going to be the successful land grant that's WVU moving forward. And that we make some of these hard decisions and say no on some things so we can resource what's left in a much better fashion than we have. And so then we're talking about, well, you can't travel for the next year and I really can't do anything about it, even though it may make it harder for P&T. Or you can't do this level of equipment purchases because we have to make everybody suffer because we have too many for the enrollment decline that we have. And so I think we have to go to say no on some things, even though it may hurt, so that the things that remain, we can say yes to. Because I want our faculty who are here, and there's going to be a lot of them, to be able to have the research and the resources and the grad students and the students that they want to have. I want programs where there can be significant levels of investment and the university consistently having a positive margin so that colleges can spend their reserves on the future and planning a transition of growth for a faculty member who maybe has been here 20 or 25 years, and they want their legacy over the next decade to turn that over to the next group of researchers at the university. I want all those things where we get to a base and we have those programs where we're growing. And it is going to be a painful process the next 3 to 4 months, 5 months to get there moving forward. But I think we have to do these things on this timeline, given where we are, so we can get to that next for positive. So I think it's a lot of hard things that we have to do the next few months to get to the positive vision. And I know that faculty are working hard. I mean, Emily, I know everybody's rowing in the same direction. If I had a magic wand or could get the Powerball up to a couple billion and win it, and we'd all have fun and then we'd solve some of these challenges, I would. But we're just going to have to do some hard work together over the next few months. You know, it's sort of what the world is versus what I want it to be are two different things at the moment. But it is a pivot towards our future given our realities. Marianne, I don't know if you want to come up and add.
I mean, I think you said it really well. I mean, we want to grow. We want a bright future. We have very limited resources right now to do that. The other thing I want to say is that we're working very closely with our Office of Research. And I know that Fred King is here to answer questions, specific questions about that, but we will be working with the Office of Research to identify and to prioritize those programs that contribute the most to our R1 position. So we will try to do this thoughtfully. That R1 position is very important to us.
We'll take another question online from Daniel Totske. Daniel?
Hi, thanks. Dan Totske, Eberly College. I wanted to return to the point about consultants and the amount of money spent on consultants, specifically what the cost-benefit analysis was of hiring a third party outside of what was stated in terms of a third party and so-called objectivity in that, what the decision was to spend this additional money rather than leveraging internal expertise at WVU.
Sure. And again, these are all very fair questions, and we're happy to answer them. I think it's all part of the process for you to test us on what we've done. We will not be perfect, but I very much appreciate the question. I do. So as it relates to hiring RPK, one of the things that we do as an institution is to understand that we as a team sometimes don't have all of the answers moving forward. And we talk to our colleagues across the country. And I think in this instance, Marianne did that, reached out. I know the Big 12 provosts were on campus here recently, and they had a conversation about struggles that, quite frankly, a number of schools are going through. As we talk through over the past several weeks working through this, and knowing that the timeline and expectations from our board, from our president, and from ourselves in the need to move through this in an appropriate fashion, and the fact that we know that this is going to be impacting people's lives. We know that. We thought that deploying in some of our foundation monies, which will pay for this consultant, would be a good use of our resources to give us an added level of comfort that we were making decisions that, while hard, were directionally in the best interest of the institution moving forward. And so I think that there are lots of hard decisions. Spending some resources to make sure that we have the eyes that are necessary on this process to give us comfort is something that I actually think we need to do as an institution to make sure we get this right.
Thanks. I just have a quick follow-up to that. So you noted that to make sure that we have the right decisions and that we don't always have the right answers. What was the process of reviewing whether or not we had the expertise that could have answered those questions, or was it just assumed that we would not, and so it was better to hire a third party?
I think it's fair to say, and I don't remember the specific timeline to the day, but our finance team and I met several weeks ago when we realized that not only did we have the $14 million problem that we talked about in November, but when we got back in January, we saw what our finances were looking at and the charge from the board on the enrollment gap. And I believe it was a Sunday that I called in Marianne and Gordon and Sharon. And Paula and I went through what the challenges could be for the rest of the year and the gap that we would have or we thought we might have for fiscal year 24, 25, and 26. And I would say that since that Sunday, where we spent a couple of hours together, that our leadership team, and this is including President Gee and all of us, we're meeting, 4 or 6 hours a week now together, not to mention all the groups that we're having moving forward. From that day several weeks ago, we've done a series of campus conversations, board presentations, discussions as an internal leadership team, talking with other schools, watching and seeing what's being said in the Chronicle about what other institutions are doing and moving, and talk through as a leadership team, what are the steps that we need to take to help us navigate through this crisis. And as a result of all of those discussions, we decided that it would be best to leverage that expertise.
And Daniel, I also want to say, while we have a great deal of expertise at the university, we've not been through this before. And we want to make sure we do it right because of the impacts that it will have on our community. Last thing we want to do is to be perceived of as being arbitrary or capricious in our decision-making. We want to make sure we get it right. And so we did talk to I talked to other Big 12 provosts who've gone through this and really determined that there was a consultant that could help us do this and make sure we did it right.
Hi, Lindsay Reinhardt, Everly College School of Social Work. My questions are more about changes that have already happened, more so than the ones that you're outlining moving forward. We've heard a lot about students first, about the value of service, land grant mission, increasing enrollment, but the changes that have come down on us already seem to be in direct conflict with that. We are doing things like tripling class sizes, increasing faculty workloads off of contract, things that are going to really impact our ability to teach the students that we already have, do the service we already do, getting funding slashed for graduate service assistants. And so I guess I'm just kind of curious how these decisions that have already happened are data-driven and are in line with those goals.
All fair points. And fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 are going to be hard. What I would tell you right now is that given the amount of students that we have and the tuition that we get for them and the amount of state support that we have, we do not generate sufficient resources to pay for all of the expenses that we currently have. And I would tell you that you are right, that it is hard and it's not sustainable. It is not sustainable to tell a researcher you can't travel. It is not sustainable to do some of the things that we're asking you to lean in and do and move forward. And I won't disagree with you at all. What I will say is, unless the trend turns and there's a bunch of new students that come through the door, then we're going to have to go through and look at some of the things that we're currently doing and stopping doing them so that we can get back to the place where we're not asking for things that we wouldn't do in a normal process. Now, with that said, there have been, and Marianne, you could speak to this a little bit, some rules and discussions about faculty workloads and some of those things and the enforcement of those consistently across the institution and some other things that we need to, and even on the administrative side, I heard this morning where it was taking way too long to get a response to do something for a faculty member that was causing us to be delayed. There's a number of things that we need to continue to improve. Unfortunately, the fact is right now, we're going to have to say no to some things to be able to not have that stress everywhere. And it's one of those things President Gee says, we're not going to spread everything like marmalade. And that's what we're having to do right now because of the fact that we're not all at will and we can turn on a dime the way some other schools do. Now, the great thing about that, and I don't mean to say this, but I shouldn't say great. I should not say that. It's not going to be a Friday, Monday, you're out of a job. We're going to have a longer conversation in October about having a faculty a cycle for faculty to get hired and employment until May until that works through. And that is great. We're able to provide a longer runway. I'll put it in that context as opposed to the way things happened earlier. but it does mean a slower process as we move through to address some of those cost perspectives. But we hear you and understand specifically that we're asking folks during this time for our institution to do a little bit more as we go through this process. I understand. And as far as that, I mean, I'll defer to provost and, you know, deans are making hard decisions amongst a number of alternatives to get where we need to go. Marianne, you have anything?
I would just add that the colleges have not, and other units across campus have not had a chance to approach this strategically because we have a very short time window to meet our budget for FY24. The whole goal in the more extended academic transformation effort is to allow us to make strategic decisions that will have pain and will likely result in losing positions, but it will be done more strategically and not just to meet an immediate budget shortfall. But we appreciate that this is having pretty big impact on the units and on the people in them. Thanks.
Kind of feels like lip service to say some of these things about student first and land grant and service because we're not seeing the acknowledgement.
We're doing our best. Lisa DiBartolomeo, Eberly College of Arts and Sciences, recognizing Suzanne Gostin-Kitchen from Chambers.
Thank you. I'm an incoming senator, but I'm not technically on the job yet. So thank you, Lisa. My question is about the severance package that was mentioned in an earlier slide. And I only looked at it for a second. All of you did. After the October 16-ish date, there's an 8 to 10 month severance package proposed, and it was kind of outlined there. But 7 of those 8 to 10 months are really us just playing out our contract. And so that's not really a severance package. It's just our salary. So can you tell me, sorry, I'm an HR person, so.
No, it's all very good. And it's a very fair question. I will tell you that we gave a preview to a couple of faculty senate leadership on Friday as to what we were going to say so that they would not be surprised. We tried to have that level of engagement. And on your behalf, we got some pushback about the way we were thinking about a couple of things. And so we've taken the weekend to rethink how we're addressing them. And so we had hoped to come today with the very specifics down to the day for the situation, but we just need a little bit more time because we're trying to be good listeners. Generally speaking, a faculty member who is identified in October and indicated that your contract will not be renewed for the next August. They'll have their assignment, should they want it, through May. And depending on what level and level of experience, the severance will be anywhere from 2 weeks to 12 weeks after that.
I'll do one from the Q&A real quick. Do you have a feeling for the number of faculty positions that will be impacted or discontinued to meet the budget that we?
I do not. I don't want to prejudge and overshoot or undershoot going forward. What I will tell you is that once we get through, and there have been some reductions, primarily on the non-classified SAS side for FY24. Once those are complete, we will be transparent about the number of individuals from that particular perspective. Going forward, I'll just use this as an opportunity to reiterate, and I just don't want to overshoot or undershoot. We're also looking at a number of things moving forward, and I think I can say this, Fred, whether we do it or not, but we've been talking about, for example, whether we move the folks from the Chestnut Research Building down to the waterfront and shut down or sell that building. That's probably $300,000 to $400,000 of annual cost savings in terms of cleaning and power and the deferred maintenance that building might need. We are working as hard as we can, as quickly as we can, to identify as many of those things as we can, offset how much we need to cut for fiscal year 25. And so we've got 3 buckets of things that are coming together. We're cutting $21 million for 24 and another $24 million for fiscal year 25. The $21 million in cuts is going in for July 1. And whether it's one time right now, but all the units need to know that those are permanent. The $24 million will come from things that I just mentioned and what we can do from a cost savings perspective. additional cuts to the administrative units, and then cuts to the academic enterprise that'll come through large-scale academic transformation, and other things that the deans or others that are working on at the moment. All three of those streams will have to come together as we get towards July to determine what levers we need to pull moving forward for the fall going forward. And as we hone in on the specifics of all of those, we will let you know moving forward on those personnel.
Hi, I'm Megan Light from the College of Creative Arts. So I'd like to be a little more forward thinking because I think this has been a little doom and gloom. But the idea for me is that enrollment is one of our core issues, right? And I've been part of institutions, frankly, that cut faculty, and what you end up seeing are huge enrollment decreases because programs are no longer available. But is RPK helping to consider other types of enrollment? So thinking about non-traditional students or transfer agreements with community colleges that are frankly way more active than we currently are, with helping students actually just transfer and enroll at WVU. In New York State, there's huge days committed to transfer agreements. And I'm not sure it solves all of our problems. I'm just saying, is there a moment here of, you know, how does that look, or what does that look like in thinking ahead about new recruitment?
So I can speak, you know, for my colleagues in various units, including enrollment management, that they are looking at every possible way to grow enrollment. We're looking at online, right? All the opportunities to attract non-traditional students, to create non-degree options for those students. So all that is happening. RPK is not helping us with that. We have some of this information. We have a partner in EAB. They share with us trends. What we have right now is a resource problem where we can't invest in growth, honestly. And so we see a lot of opportunity, but we don't necessarily have the resources to invest in those areas of growth. So we clearly know you can't cut your way to success, but you can't grow your way to success either during these kinds of challenging times. But thank you very much for that comment.
I'll get another question out of the Q&A. For all things equal, is there a preference for retaining tenure track over teaching assistant professors who have yearly contracts?
It's a holistic assessment. So it's hard to say in individual circumstances whether there is a preference for one type of faculty member versus the other type of faculty members. It will determine on how the program will be reduced and what the program will look like after the reduction, if it'll be more focused on teaching or if it will still be focused on research and teaching.
Heiko ter Haseborg, Eberly College. Ever since the budget crisis became so urgent, faculty across the university are confronted with the sacrifices they will need to make going forward. Many are wondering if they will have a job at all. And even for those of us who will, we expect, of course, larger class sizes and higher workloads without additional compensation, and most are willing to do that and chip in that way. Yet we also keep hearing the message that we must work together as one WVU to mitigate the decrease in student enrollment and the budget deficit going forward. Given the fact that the salaries of many of the university's administrators are several times higher than those of average faculty, it would send a very strong signal of motivation, solidarity, and one WVU spirit if some members of the administration would take a voluntary pay decrease to contribute their share to the cost savings the university has to accomplish. My question is anyone in the administration of WVU considering such a solidarity pay decrease? And if not, why not?
You know, because I think that's a fair question. But you know, what I have done is I have contributed. I've contributed about $3.5 million to the institution, much of it going into scholarships and a variety of other things. That's how I am using my resources. And I think that many of the people up here are major contributors too. We can do it in a number of different ways. And in fact, I welcome everyone to start thinking about the Day of Giving and a variety of other things. And the opportunities that we have. So I think that we don't want to have a a divide between faculty and staff. You know, the salaries that I think everyone earns the salaries that are appropriate for them. We do not have bloated salaries here compared with most places. When I was at Ohio State, the salaries for administrators were much higher, and we had many more of them. When I came here, I kept the number of administrators low. We have one of the lowest administrative cadres in the country, and we will keep it that way. And so, you know, when we start talking about those kinds of things, I think it's important to understand that we're all contributing to the general welfare of the institution. And I'm cheerfully, I'm grateful that I can be able to do that. But that is something that I will continue to do, as a matter of fact. So, and as I say, I think other people are doing very much along the same line of what they are doing in terms of solidarity. And I like that note.
So I'll just indicate as well for me, anybody that's been down to Reynolds, there's an Allsop study hall. So there's a $50,000 gift behind that. My wife and I gave to give back. I'll never be able to pay forward what this institution has done for me. And it's an easy gift that we've committed to make over the next 4 years, moving forward at the institution. And my wife and I continue to talk about how we can, in these times, give back additionally. So your point's a valid one. And you know, I won't say never, but I haven't sought a reimbursement for travel, I don't think, in quite some time. I just do it. And so we need to make sacrifices. I do want to say I'm very blessed. I am by far not, well, I shouldn't say that. My wife's the breadwinner in my family. I'm very blessed for that. And I know President Gee has said this, and he said for his giving is very blessed and giving back to this institution. I do want to caution, though, that as President Gee indicated, that asking even senior leaders or others, once you get very far, asking someone to take less take-home pay can have a really crippling effect in getting talent to leave, no matter where you are moving forward at the institution. And so I'm really hesitant to ask any of my colleagues to say you really need to cut your paycheck and take home pay, even though we've gone through an analysis of what we think you're entitled to from a market perspective. So it's a very fair point and a very fair question. And as I said, I will be, as long as I can, able a donor at this institution for that very reason, and particularly during these times.
Uğur Kale, College of Applied Human Sciences. I have two questions, and the first one is about the holistic assessment. So seniority, knowledge, I mean, the faculty will be compared, right? There will be some comparisons. Will those comparisons be made at the program level or across programs within college? The second question is, approximately how many faculty and staff do you expect will be RIFT?
For your second question, Rob answered that before. We just don't know at this moment in time because we have a lot of different budgetary aspects that have to come together before we know that answer. But to answer your first question, it is a holistic assessment. It will be done based upon the program that is subject to the review. And so it's not across other programs, but the program that is was under review and was recommended for reduction or discontinuation.
Scott Crutchlow, Everly. I just wanted to follow up on the comment about administrative salaries, because as you all have mentioned, as part of this whole process, at the department level, administrators are having to take major cuts. Like in political science, the Director of Graduate Studies now is going to have no stipend whatsoever because he didn't want to have to give up course release, which I think was entirely reasonable because he's ever seen 30 graduate students. But it was either the money or the course release. So now he's getting no stipend whatsoever. So, I mean, Rob, I don't doubt that you work very, very hard for an institution, but down to the department level, people who are giving service in that way are taking significant pay cuts. So I think Heiko's point is well taken, and I would hope that, that the administration will keep that in mind going forward. Thank you.
The university, the language, I think, in the Board of Governors rule the university may offer a severance package to faculty member who is impacted by a RIF if financially feasible. Does this mean that severance packages will potentially not be offered?
So no, we are planning on offering severance packages. That will be that the detailed schedule will be what is presented to our Board of Governors on May 17th, and will be subject to the public comment period before it is finalized and voted upon by our board.
Hi, Jenna Martin, College of the Law. Can you clarify what the sort of numbers is for budgetary shortfalls? The reason why I ask is because there was an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education last week that indicated that the number was 75 million. And we just haven't heard that from the university sort of officially. I didn't know if that was true or not.
Sure. So if you haven't watched the campus conversation and you're not drowsy, so it's in there. It is. And so what we have for next year is a $45 million shortfall. And if we do not increase market share, and given the enrollment cliff, that amount grows from 45 million next year to by fiscal year 2028, 75 million. Yep.
Thank you.
So it's not 45, it's not 75 next year.
That was my.
I think that's being.
Yeah, so yes, I mean, I apologize, but yes, it's 45 for next year.
Dave Hauser, Eberly. Just a question about the timeline a bit. If I read it correctly, programs will be identified as being up for transformation, whatever verb you'd like to use, roughly in early August, and then they have a chance to put an appeal together at that point, or faculty members can appeal at that point.
Yeah, so, sorry, let me clarify. So in the week of July 10th is when the programs will be identified as those of concern that will go through the program review process. From July 11th through the 31st is when faculty are to work with their deans and chairs to provide information into that review form. The week of August, around August 11th, 14th, is when the provost office will announce which of those programs of concern the office is not Marianne person, her office is recommending for either reduction or discontinuation or to stay as is. And then after that point, the faculty member can file a notice of appeal in that 7-day window, and then we have an appeal hearing after that.
Yes. So my question is there going to be sufficient data made available through the provost office so that faculty can mount an effective appeal? In other words, part of the transparency argument here is that in order to effectively argue some sort of appeal for your program being transformed, you'll need access to not only their own department's data, but presumably comparative data and other things like that. If they genuinely want to mount an effective data-driven appeal, they'll need help with that.
Right. So we haven't figured out exactly what that data sharing will look like, whether we'll have a site that that you can, a password protected site that you can access that, but we will definitely be providing data to the units.
Snuggles from the School of Public Health. I had a question in regards to the severance packages. There are a number of specialty track faculty at the Health Sciences Center, for example, and the tracks that were listed on the presentation did not account for all of those. I was wondering if there was going to be clarity on, for example, scientist educator or clinical professors or other tracks within that within the outline that's going to be produced.
Yes, and I'll definitely photo friend to Chris and Tracy in the back as to which one those categories fall under, but we'll work through that and make sure it's clearer. Thank you.
All right, so there are several other questions in the Q&A. So here, for programs identified for program reduction and discontinuation is program, and the faculty subjected to the RIF considered a major or department.
BOG Academics Rule 2.2 defines a program as a program constituted by the degree designation, all its constituent majors, a single major, a minor, a certificate program, or any other collection of curricula as defined by the college dean's office or the provost's office.
It could be parts of department, certain degree, not necessarily a complete or a full department.
Correct.
Why that again? So by that, it could be particular degree programs within a department. It could be minors within a department. It could be entire departments. So it doesn't have to be a complete department. It could be programs or sub-programs within that department. Are there any plans to eliminate or sell some of the properties acquired or developed as public-private partnerships? Get that one, Rob. I think that's probably yours. Right there at the top. Properties, public-private partnerships.
Are there any plans to eliminate or sell some of the properties acquired or developed as public-private partnerships? Okay, so let's talk about our student housing public-private partnerships and how they work. We own the ground, and then the private party borrowed money. Let's take U Park, which is over by the stadium. They borrowed around $110 million. I'm sorry, we bought the land and we leased the land to them for 40 years. We leased the land to them for 40 years. They then took and borrowed against that lease, like you would borrow against the house. They just borrowed against the lease, $110 million, and they built the building on that ground subject to that lease. And then the building was donated to the university. So we own the building, but it's subject to a 37 or 38-year-old lease, a lease with 36 or 37 years on it at this point, subject to a bank note, and the lease is controlled by the third party. So there's not a way at this instance to sell that property subject to those leases and those structures. So no, we are not planning on selling those and really couldn't.
Do you have any estimate on the number of programs that might be identified as programs? I know that's not one you can.
The short answer is no. But hopefully by midsummer, we will have a much better idea of what we're looking at.
Has there been any discussion about how the budget cuts could trigger a mass exodus of faculty that you would want to retain?
Yes, we are worried about the fact that some of our key talent may leave. What I can tell you is that we spend, and some of this is through hospital system reimbursement, we spend about $600 million on our personnel, another $230 million on supplies, and a $1.1 billion budget. Now, I know I've been hesitant to give a number, but just bear with me here for a second. There will be some reductions. The overwhelming most of us are still, and you have to ask him about me, but using the us collectively as a university community, will be here going forward. And so I know, as I've indicated, that what we've indicated from a budgetary perspective has led to some consternation. Our thoughts were, let's be transparent. Let's be transparent about the number. Let's be transparent about the timeline. And while there are some folks who will now say, oh my goodness, we've got to wait till July to get whether it's a program of concern or September to have a decision. We heard, I think, Scott, you may have asked the question, we need a more definitive timeline as to how this is all going to go forward. We decided to be more transparent. We knew that would cause some folks to say, hey, is this the best place moving forward? What I will tell you in response is, I believe it is. The next few months are going to be hard. We're going to turn this corner at this institution quicker than most institutions do. And there are a lot more institutions looking at the same scoreboard that we have than are not. And we're going to make it through this, and we're going to be a great place, continue to be a great institution moving forward. But if you are one of those faculty members, and I can't say for everyone, but we have a lot of productive faculty members who do a lot of terrific work. And come July, they'll find their program is not of a concern, or through a program reduction that they still have a job, and we're going to move forward. As an institution, I think that will ultimately turn into offense. So, but yes, I mean, it is weighing on this leadership team, the decisions that we're making, and just about every word that we say publicly or even privately, and how it will be interpreted by the university community. So let me say that again. We have to do some adjustments. We have to deal with the headwinds we're facing, but we're trying to lean into it, get past it to where we get back on the offensive. WVU is a great place to work. It's going to be hard for a few months, but it will continue to be a great place to work for a long time.
I believe Daniel Tutske has another question online. Daniel?
Yeah, thanks so much. So Dan Totske again, Eberly College. I want to start by saying that if I could donate money to protect my colleagues who make even less than me, I would, but I can barely pay rent and my crushing student loan debt. But that being said, I did want to talk about startup funds and other funds that are guaranteed in our contracts to especially junior faculty and incoming faculty. We've had some concerns from folks who have either experienced an inability to access their funds despite having pretty good justification for it, especially for those of us who have external funding obligations or expectations rather in our contracts for promotion. So what I wanted to ask was what assurances can early career faculty, pre-tenure faculty, and especially incoming faculty who have funds that they should be obligated to, what assurances do they have that they will be able to access those funds, particularly over the next year, but in the years moving forward? Thanks.
Yep. So to that previous question, to continue on it, we want folks to have a bright future and be able to continue their careers here at the institution. It is our intent to do everything that we possibly can, and it is a priority as it relates to startup funds. And so as we work through COVID, we know that there were some delays as we work through from that, and we're going to have to work through this process from a budgetary perspective. But we know that it is a priority of the institution that those startup packages need to be funded and be able to spend over the next several years. So I'm not going to get into the guaranteeing business, because if you would have suggested some of the things that we face the next 6 months, I probably would have lost on those guarantees. I will publicly say that it is a priority moving forward for the commitments we've made on startups to try to work through those. I've met with Fred, I've met with the STEM deans. We've talked about this internally. We've talked about whether we can rely on some foundation funding or whether we have to cut in other areas to make those move forward. But to my earlier point and to our faculty colleagues, that while this is a hard time at the moment, we know that we need to be transparent and keep your trust and live up to our commitments. So we may ask you to work with us on timing a little bit. We're going to do all that we can to live up to our word in our commitments. And again, no guarantees, but startups are a priority. And I know that there's been some consternation over that. Dean Dunaway has made it clear it's a priority for him. I see him in the back room smiling to let me know that it's important to work through. I don't have all the answers on it, but it is a priority.
Thanks. A quick follow-up to that. If it's also a matter of timing, will we then be given the option, just like we did in previous years with the pandemic, to extend the time in which that we can use our startup funds? Because generally speaking, there's just a several year expectation on that. Will we be able to extend that, perhaps even past promotion or otherwise, to access those funds if we're not able to access them in a timely manner?
Dan, we will absolutely look into that. And I can tell you that we will do something about it.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions here in the room? I know we have some more from the non-senator audience online. Can we submit those to you all and get answers for those? All right. Any other questions here online? So if you submitted a question in the chat, the Q&A that we didn't get to, we have a record of those. We'll ask the administration to provide answers, and we'll post those online. One other quick short one. Are cuts being anticipated from the athletic program?
So we have been, so I think as we've talked about, from time to time. Athletics is supposed to carry their own weight, and they are and have been. I talk to Ren 2 or 3 times a week, and our finance teams are in contact frequently that they need to be good stewards of the monies they use and be a good university citizen as we work forward as a particular institution. As an auxiliary, they have a certain set of revenues that they generate and can spend, and we've tried to work through that with them thoughtfully as good university partners. I will say, and so a specific cut for an auxiliary, it's a little bit different. What I will say though, as we work through and moving forward, for better or worse, athletics is not the reason we're here, but they are part of our institution. And I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When we talked about this a few years ago, we talked about the increase in applications being the Greer effect. And one of the reasons why our applications rose is because Will Greer was in the Heisman and in the news consistently. I think Kansas State, they made the run to the Elite Eight, $64 million worth of earned free media that they received as a result of those successes. And so just like we have to have the ability to invest to be successful on the academic side of the house, as our athletic program goes, so does it goes the assistance or not with the institution going forward. They are not spending and continuing to spend. If you look at our expenditures, particularly once you take out travel, which we have more travel expenses, and look at the discretionary spend and investments in our program, we are around the bottom of the Big 12. So it's not where we're second or third or competing with the Texas or Oklahomas. We do and need to do more with less going forward.
All right, I know it's been a long meeting so far, so thank you all for all the information you provided today. If you did post a question in the Q&A, we'll try and get an answer to that and have that posted online. So kind of continuing on with the last bits of the agenda, is there any new business? All right, so seeing none. So before we adjourn today, I just want to say it's been an honor to represent the faculty and the campus community as Faculty Senate Chair this year. It's been a rewarding, although very time-consuming and experience for me. I've learned more than I could ever have imagined about the inner workings of our great institution. I'm incredibly grateful to Ashley Martucci, Stan Heilman, Eloise Elliott, Dave Hauser, Corey Hunt. I'll get to Franklin in a minute. Oh, brother. So I want to thank all of you for your hard work. I want to thank all of our committee chairs of the Senate for the hard work that they've and dedication throughout the year. Also grateful for the support and engagement from President Guy Provost Reed and her team, many other administrators that I've worked with throughout the year. So it's a tradition that the incoming Faculty Senate Chair adjourn the last meeting of the year. While I will likely have one more meeting to chair on June 5th, I'm going to go ahead and make the ceremonial presentation of the gavel to our incoming chair. Frankie has been a steadfast assistant and supporter throughout the year, has devoted countless hours to meetings and working with me to conduct the business of the Senate. So Frankie, as your year of apprenticeship draws to a close, I know that you'll be a strong voice, devoted representative for the faculty as Faculty Senate Chair and BOG member next year. I deeply appreciate all that you have done to help and support me this year and look forward to working with you in the next year. Know that you too will have the support of a strong team behind you. So signifying the peaceful transfer of leadership, I present to you this gavel. The ship is yours, Captain. Pilot it well. Will you please adjourn the meeting?
Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second? Meeting adjourned.